The sun was just setting, painting the sky a deep orange, when a rusted pickup truck rolled up the gravel road. The truck crunched through the dust, its engine sputtering as it came to a halt in front of a lonely farmhouse surrounded by fields that stretched out in every direction. To the casual observer, it seemed like just another day on the farm, but for the three men inside that truck, it was a moment charged with promise. A good score was waiting for them, or at least, that's what they thought. Jake, the driver, leaned against the window, eyes narrowed like a predator surveying its prey. He was the mastermind. If there was a way to get something for nothing, he was the one to find it. "Look at that place. No one's around," he said, casting a glance at his accomplices seated in the back. Mikey, wiry and nervous, fidgeted with a flashlight he had brought along, while Tom, stocky and slower to think, simply nodded, chewing the inside of his cheek. None of them had any idea what they were getting into. As they stepped out of the truck, the evening air wrapped around them, heavy with the unmistakable scent of earth and the faintest hint of livestock. It felt tranquil, almost surreal, a perfect setting for a heist. What they didn't know was that tranquility had teeth. The trio approached the back door of the farmhouse, and as they crept across the yard, a sudden squawk shattered the silence. A chicken flapped its wings in alarm and took off, sending Mikey jumping backward. "SHH. Keep it down," Jake hissed, his eyes darting. They reached the door, an old wooden thing that looked like it hadn't been opened in years. Jake pulled out a crowbar, its steel glinting in the fading light. With a few determined pries, he forced the door open, the hinges groaning like an old man in pain. They stepped inside, the smell of stale air hitting them like a wave. Dust danced in the beams of their flashlights, swirling around the dim room. They moved as a unit, each step infused with adrenaline. This was it. They were here to find what they'd heard whispered in the taverns. The rich farmer who supposedly stashed cash in the old barn. They had no idea that the barn itself held more than just old tools and hay. As they rummaged through the house, disappointment set in. It was just what they expected: dusty furniture, old pictures on the walls, and the kind of memories that weren't theirs to take. But Jake's mind raced, fueled by the promise of that barn. "Let's go. We'll find what we're looking for out there," he urged, leading the way. They pushed through the back door, a rush of night air washing over them. The barn loomed ahead, much larger than they had anticipated, shadows swallowing the corners. Jake took the lead again, the adrenaline coursing through him, pushing the others forward. Mikey stayed closer to the entrance, his nerves fraying. He whispered, glancing towards the darkness outside like it might swallow him whole. "Good luck with that," Tom scoffed, rolling his eyes. "It's a farm, man." They split up within the barn, exploring each nook and cranny. Dust motes floated in the air, and oddly enough, for being such a remote place, sounds of rustling came from somewhere deeper within. It echoed like whispers, making Mikey's heart race. Suddenly, Jake's flashlight beam caught something shiny atop a stack of old crates. He climbed up, excitement bubbling inside him. But as he reached for it, a loud crash erupted from the far corner of the barn. Mikey's heart jumped into his throat. His voice trembled like shaky ground during an earthquake, filled with palpable fear. "Just some old junk," Jake said, still preoccupied with the shiny object. His greed blinded him. But in that moment, a heavy thud echoed, followed by the unmistakable sound of low growling. All three men froze, the weight of realization crashing over them like an icy wave. Every cliché they had ever heard about farms popped into their minds as if they were punchlines to a dark joke. They hadn't done their homework. In the shadows, a pair of eyes glinted, catching the flashlight's beam. It was a massive German shepherd, muscle rippling under its fur, standing protectively by a wooden trough. It wasn't rabid or vicious. It was intelligent, aware of the intruders it was now facing. Jake hissed, a command laced with his own rising fear. But it was too late. The dog sensed their anxiety. With a bark that echoed like thunder, it pounced, the sound enough to send Mikey bolting back towards the door. But Jake didn't move, frozen in his spot, torn between fighting for whatever treasure he thought he could claim and the imminent danger approaching. Tom shouted, scrambling toward the barn exit. But Mikey had already dashed out, clutching the heavy door, desperately pushing against it. Jake adrenaline surged, and before he knew it, he was running too. With a few strides, he barreled past the growling beast, putting distance between them and the chaos they had created. As they made it outside, they heard the frantic scramble of paws behind them, a furious bark echoing in their wake. What they didn't realize was that they hadn't just awakened the protective dog. Their noise had stirred something else in the stillness of twilight. Outside, they leaped into the truck, hearts pounding. "Go!" Mikey yelled, almost hyperventilating, eyes wide with fear. Jake fumbled with the keys, shaking hands, betraying his need for speed. In the back, Tom slammed the door shut just as the dog burst out of the barn, barking furiously. It didn't chase after them. Instead, it stood its ground, its loyalty locked tight to the property. The engine finally roared to life, and Jake slammed down on the gas pedal, sending gravel flying. They tore down the road, leaving the darkness of the farm behind. But even as they sped away, that looming farmhouse stared back, a silent witness to their absurd overreach. Later that night, sitting in their dingy motel room, their hearts finally began to settle, but the thrill of the encounter clawed at them. But there was something intoxicating about the danger they had faced. They exchanged nervous laughs, a mixture of relief and disbelief clashing within the dim lighting. "We'll never do that again," Mikey breathed, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Are you kidding?" "That was adrenaline," Jake said, his voice a simmering mix of regret and excitement. "We just need a better plan next time." Tom, silent, stared at the ceiling, lost in thought. This was not the first plan that had gone wrong for them. He had just hoped it would be the last. "Maybe we should quit while we're ahead," he muttered, feeling the weight of their choices pressing down on him. But Jake only laughed, the taste of opportunity still lingering. "Quit." Yet even as he spoke, a tiny seed of doubt began to sprout in the back of his mind. They had rolled into the farmer's territory like a pack of overconfident wolves, expecting an easy meal. But nature, in all its forms, had its own defenses, beautiful and fierce. Weeks went by, and tales began to circulate in the local bars. Word of the 3 men who had tried to rob the farm spread like wildfire. The image of the ferocious dog became mythic, each recounting adding new layers. It was said the dog had chased those thieves clear to the edge of town, defending its home as fiercely as any man would defend his own castle. And then came the receipts of their decisions. Local rumors trickled in about the farmhouse owner, a grizzled veteran of life under the open skies. He had a reputation not just for his dogs, but also for his scarred past and vast knowledge of the land. One evening, as Jake flipped through the channels, he caught a news story rippling through screens across the region. "Local hero," it read. Footage of the farmer and his dog, walking side by side down the red dirt path, began to play. The farmer laughing, sturdy and weather-beaten, the dog, loyal and ever vigilant by his side. Jake's heart sank further with each passing moment. His idea of an easy score had turned into a deep-seated reminder that every corner of life, even the quiet corners of a farm, has strength. And that strength often rests in shadows, waiting patiently for the blind and greedy to wander too close. What did it mean to be brave, to be strong? As memories of that evening flickered like the flashlight beam they once waved so confidently, the laughter vanished. Those men had thought themselves fearless, yet their bravado was merely a mask for something far more fragile: fear. In that motel room, the buzzing night now blended with haunting echoes. Money could never replace the experience, the sheer terror and thrill of that night, for it had taught them a lesson that echoed louder than any successful heist ever could. The truth was clear now. Sometimes, you lose much more than you gain in the chase for fortune. Sometimes, wisdom is birthed from folly, and the fiercest adversaries are not always what we expect. They are often lurking just beneath the surface, guarding the things that have true value: home, safety, and loyalty. And therein lies one unwavering truth: in the world of shadows and whispers, the bravest heart often belongs to those who protect rather than those who steal. The night was heavy with an uneasy stillness, the kind that wraps around you like a thick fog, hiding secrets in its folds. In the distance, a rusted pickup truck crept down a winding dirt road leading to a farmhouse that looked abandoned at first glance. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating overgrown weeds and the outline of a ramshackle barn. To most, it seemed like a forgotten relic of another time, quiet, empty, and ripe for the picking. But for three men packed into that truck, it was an opportunity waiting to be seized. Jake, the self-proclaimed mastermind, leaned forward, breathing in the air thick with the scent of musty earth and decaying leaves. "This is it. Easy money," he said, smirking with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. Mikey, wiry and constantly fidgeting, sat uneasy in the backseat. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was a bad idea. Tom, the muscle of the group, simply grunted in agreement, his mind already racing ahead to what they might find. As they stepped out of the truck, the cool night air pricked at their skin, sharpening their senses. Crickets chorused in the background, a steady rhythm that only heightened the tension. They moved towards the house, footsteps echoing in the silence. Each step was a decision, a choice to cross a line that once crossed would forever change them. "Stay close," Jake whispered as he pushed open the old back door, its creak slicing through the quiet like a knife. The interior was dark, shrouded in layers of dust and neglect. The smell of mildew hung heavy in the air, mixed with the faint aroma of wood and animal feed. They split up, driven by an instinct that urged them to explore every shadow while time slipped away. Mikey stumbled into the kitchen, its surfaces coated in a thick film of neglect. Plates and cups lay stacked haphazardly, jarring reminders of lives once lived here. He felt a chill run down his spine. He called to Jake, who was already rifling through drawers in search of treasures. "Relax," Jake replied, his voice full of bravado. "No one comes here anymore." In his mind, Mikey envisioned quick cash, easy wealth that could set them up for life. But as he peered around, his doubts grew heavy and unwelcome. "We should move," he urged, nervousness creeping into his voice. But Jake was already moving toward the back door, where the barn beckoned like a siren, promising easy pickings. "This is where they keep the good stuff," he declared, leading the way. Out they went, into the open space where the moon cast a cool silver glow over everything. The barn loomed ahead, shadows dancing across its weathered walls as if there were watchers hidden within. They approached cautiously, a collective breath held tight in their chests. Jake swung open the barn doors, the creak echoing into the night. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of hay and animals long gone. The interior was cluttered with old tools, rusted farming equipment, and a heavy sense of abandonment. Tom called out, the echo of his own voice bouncing off the walls, a reminder of their vulnerability. As they scoured the space, a glint of metal caught Jake's eye. Clambering onto some crates, he reached for it, a small antique box, its latch worn but intact. "Look at this," he beamed. But as he opened it, disappointment clouded his excitement. Inside lay nothing but some dusty old coins, far from the stash they had imagined. Suddenly, from somewhere deep within the barn, a loud crashing sound broke the stillness. It reverberated around them, amplifying their fears. The three men stiffened, exchanging anxious glances. Mikey whispered, feeling the hairs on the back of his neck prickle. "It's probably just the old structure settling," Jake replied, though his confidence was wavering. But Tom's instincts kicked in. "We should get out of here," he urged. Mikey nodded eagerly, the fear coursing through him now palpable and pressing. Before Jake could respond, another crash rang out, louder this time, followed by low growling that sent shivers racing down Mikey's spine. He looked toward the source of the sound and saw a pair of glowing eyes emerging from the darkness. A massive German shepherd, its muscles coiled, ready for anything. Jake's bravado flickered as reality dawned on him. He stammered, his bravado now stripped away, leaving only instinct. But it was too late. The dog lunged forward, its growl echoed like a warning from nature itself. Mikey didn't waste a breath. He sprinted for the exit, heart pounding in his chest. He gasped, adrenaline surging through his veins as they dived back into the night. Tom barreled out of the barn, the dog right on his heels, barking like a siren beckoning its friends for help. They dashed toward the truck, legs pumping furiously against the dirt. The growls grew louder, and with each step, the reality of their bad decision tightened around them like a noose. Mikey shouted, slamming the passenger door behind him as he dove into the front seat. Jake fumbled for the keys, panic flooding his senses as he muttered to himself. The engine roared to life in what felt like an eternity, and they peeled out of the driveway, kicking up dust and dirt in a frantic escape. Tom panted, glancing back at the barn as it faded into the darkness. Mikey's voice trembled. Jake was silent, the thrill of the hunt replaced by the weight of panic settling in. They drove further down the dirt road, the night enveloping them, cloaking their fears in darkness. What had they been thinking? The farmhouse, once a target of opportunity, now felt like a ghost chasing them through the night. The adrenaline-fueled high from the risk was long gone, replaced by an uneasy silence within the truck. They exchanged glances, but words failed them. What were they to say? Seemed far more absurd than they had imagined. When they reached the edge of town, they pulled over beneath the dim light of a street lamp. They stared at one another, their breath still caught in their throats. "We were just stupid," Mikey finally said, voice trembling. "Just needed a little more time." Jake waved him off, trying to regain his lost confidence, but the crack in his bravado was evident. Tom shot back, fists clenched against the steering wheel. "We underestimated that place." The truth hit harder than any blow they could have faced. They had walked in with crooked plans, expecting an easy score, believing themselves to be smarter and quicker than anyone else. But reality had come crashing down. Farms have their own stories, and they aren't always welcoming to thieves. Weeks passed, and life returned to its rhythm, but the memory of that night lingered like a shadow. Jake kept pushing for another chance, scouring the back alleys for the next easy score. But somewhere inside, he felt the chill of reality biting back, whispering that this was not the life for them. One night, they gathered at their usual haunt, the local bar buzzing with laughter and camaraderie. As they shared drinks, tales of their attempted heist drifted between laughter, turning them into legends within their small circle. But it felt different now, like another creeping story that began to turn with every retelling. Mikey laughed, but his voice cracked, layering unease beneath the humor. Jake added, trying to keep their spirits up, but the laughs felt hollow this time. Whispers of the farmer's dog floated through the bar as others shared the tale, embellishing it with wild imagination. They spoke of the heroism in protecting one's home, the bravery of a loyal dog that was more than just a pet, it was a guardian. No longer were the men the bold criminals. They were mere footnotes in the narrative, figures in a bigger story. A chill fluttered through Jake's heart, the haunting realization that they had been played, not by the farmer, but by their own greed and folly. And it wasn't just laughter at the bar. It was the locals' collective voice picking apart their incompetence. Ultimately, they had underestimated not just the farmer, but the very essence of life that thrives beneath the surface. Farms were not just vessels for crops. They were homes that held layers of grit, resilience, and a fierce will to protect what mattered most. Mikey, feeling the weight of discontent, stood up. He couldn't take any more laughter at their expense. "I need a break," he muttered, leaving the bar's warm embrace behind him, filled to the brim with lingering doubts and dark thoughts. Tom glanced at Jake. "Maybe we should all take a break," he suggested, almost as if testing the waters. As they walked back out into the night, Jake felt the walls closing in. The easy score was nowhere to be found. It was a bitter reminder of what they had tried to take from others. Surrounded by the cool night, with stars shining down like watchful eyes, Jake finally understood. Farms had guardians, loyal dogs, weathered farmers, and the spirit of something much greater than mere wealth. And perhaps that was a story worth more than anything they could ever steal. His heart settled. A quiet awakening stirred within him. They could chase shadows and hope for easy wins, but true gain was often found in the lessons of humility and respect. What they had thought would be an easy score had turned into a gift wrapped in hard truths. In the distance, the sound of crickets hummed a gentle lullaby, weaving through the night. Those echoes spoke not of what was lost, but of what they could learn, a symphony of resilience harmonizing with the whispers of the night. And in that stillness, they finally understood that sometimes the real treasure is found not in gold or silver, but in recognizing the strength of those who hold their ground, the farmers, the dogs, and the stories that thrived in the shadows. The moon hung low, casting pale light over the fields, creating a scene that seemed peaceful and serene. But to three men crouched behind a hedge, it felt like the eye of a storm, an uneasy calm before chaos erupted. The truck they parked just down the dirt road was old and rusty, a perfect disguise for what they believed to be an easy score. The farmhouse ahead, cloaked in shadows, loomed like a giant waiting for them to pull its secrets. "Look at that place. It's just a farm," Jake whispered, his voice barely audible against the nocturnal symphony. He was the leader of the trio, the one with both guts and swagger, but tonight that swagger was tinged with excitement. Mikey, the anxious one, shifted his weight nervously. "Are you sure we shouldn't just keep driving?" A quiet tremor in his voice betrayed his fear. Tom, stocky and built for mischief, leaned back, arms crossed. "What wrong? Think of all the cash we can score. We're in and out." Jake flashed a smile that held more bravado than assurance. The three men stepped out from the shadows, cautious but eager, creeping toward the back door of the farmhouse. They moved like whispers, barely disturbing the cool night air. Jake pulled out a small crowbar, his heart racing with anticipation, like a predator inching towards its prey. With a twist of his wrist, the door creaked open, the sound echoing through the silence, a warning sign they ignored. The interior was dim, filled with shadows that danced along the walls. Dust hung like a fog, making everything seem ancient and forgotten. "Just look for anything valuable," Jake instructed, already rushing into the kitchen, his eyes darting around. He rifled through drawers, tossing aside forks and spoons, frustrated with the mundane. Meanwhile, Mikey stood still, his unease wrapping around him like a shroud. He whispered, though it felt futile. Tom shot back, filled with misguided confidence. He swept past Mikey and continued searching, thudding through rooms like a weighty ghost. Suddenly, something caught Mikey's eye, a picture hanging crookedly on the wall. The faces of a family stared back at him, smiles frozen in time. It sent a chill down his spine. This wasn't just a place, it was someone's home. He felt an urge to turn back, but his feet refused to budge. As the three men divided their labor, the tension shifted and grew like drumbeats in the dark. Jake found an old safe hidden beneath a dusty rug. He knelt down, the thrill of his discovery burning in his chest. "Help me get this open," he growled, determination igniting in his eyes. But before they could pry it open, a sudden noise, a heavy thud echoed from the back of the house. All three men stopped, their hearts pounding. In that moment, time stood still. The reality of what they were doing slammed into them. Mikey gasped, his breath quickening. "Could be nothing," Jake snapped, though he couldn't shake the knot tightening in his stomach. But Tom, the muscle, nudged his way toward the back door, eyes narrow. They moved cautiously, each footfall heavy with unease, until they reached the back door. Jake could hear his own heartbeat echoing in his ears, urging them to leave. But curiosity pushed them forward. He cautiously pulled the door open. What met their eyes was a chaos of shadows and shapes, but something far more unsettling lurked within. The sound that once hinted at wind now resonated with a low growl, a protective force born of instinct and loyalty. A massive German shepherd stepped into the light, its eyes glinting with ferocity. Black and tan fur rippled over its muscles, ready to defend its territory. The dog stood tall and imposing, blocking their exit as if announcing the end of their freedom. Jake shouted, the bravery that once filled his veins dissipating in the face of reality. He turned, and his bravado shattered like glass. Tom yelled. Mikey didn't need to be told twice. He bolted back through the house as fast as his legs could carry him, heart racing as he ripped through the entryway. Jake followed closely, feeling the dog's hot breath on his back. The chaos he sought had become a nightmare, a raw reminder that they weren't just thieves. They threatened a world that didn't belong to them. They burst through the front door, the moonlight hitting them like a splash of cold water. The dog pursued them, barking like an alarm bell, echoing through the night, tearing through their will to escape. Jake shouted, flinging himself through the passenger door, hands shaking. Tom tumbled into the backseat just as Mikey slammed the driver's door shut, fumbling the keys in a panic. The engine sputtered, refusing to cooperate. Mikey begged, the fear rising in him, claws dragging deep into his gut. Just as the growling neared, the engine roared to life and they screeched out of the gravel driveway, dust flying in their wake. But the palpable fear didn't release its grip. They dashed down the dirt road, adrenaline flooding through them like an electric current. Mikey panted, gripping the steering wheel. Jake snapped, still reeling from the chaos they had invited into their lives. Tom echoed, incredulity spilling from his mouth. Silence filled the truck, the weight of what had just happened hanging like a thick fog between them. They finally reached the edge of town, the streetlights flickering like gentle reminders of normalcy, but they were far from normal. They had crossed over a line, diving headfirst into the darkness of their desires. As they parked the truck in an empty lot, their breaths began to slow. The nighttime calm returned, almost mocking after the chaos they had just unleashed. Jake finally asked, but his bravado was hollow now. Mikey's voice shook as he spoke. "We can't keep doing this." Tom, quiet for once, nodded. "Yeah, we got lucky this time." "Next time we'll plan better," Jake retorted, the defiance still flickering. "It's a farm for crying out loud." But deep down, a gnawing discomfort settled in. A realization that this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about respect, a line they had crossed without thinking. They hadn't just invaded a family's space. They had tangled with something far larger than themselves. As days turned to weeks, the story of the failed heist echoed through the town, twisting like a fog over their heads. Each retelling grew more exaggerated, the dog becoming a legendary guardian in local folklore. Townsfolk would laugh, shaking their heads. The dog chased them clean out of town. Mikey often went to the bar alone. Every time he heard the tales, he felt the heat of shame wash over him. He hadn't simply been a part of a robbery. He was now a figure in a fable, a warning whispered among friends. One evening, as he sat nursing a drink, the owner of the tavern, an old man with weathered hands and a kind heart, slid onto the bar stool beside him. "You might want to think about putting those past days behind you," he said, his voice soft yet firm. Mikey sighed, feeling the weight of his choices settling heavily on his shoulders. "I know. Sometimes it ain't about getting caught. It's about knowing when to walk away," the bartender replied, looking him straight in the eye. "You and your friends may have looked for easy money, but life don't always work that way. That farmer, he's got a story. And those dogs." Mikey nodded, realizing the truth resonated within him. They were not just thieves. They had underestimated the lives entwined with that farmhouse, dismissing the weight of a family's history. Those dogs weren't just protectors. They were echoes of loyalty, guardians of memories carved deep into the soil. Meanwhile, Jake pushed for yet another plan, the next heist. But amid his bravado, Mikey felt a deep uprooting, a twisting knot. "No, Jake, I can't. We have to stop," he said firmly, finally finding his voice. Tom, who had leaned into Jake's reckless energy before, now found himself torn. It felt like they were standing at a crossroads, and each decision weighed heavier than any stolen dollar. He murmured, his voice barely breaking through. The next few days were filled with silence, the weight of unspoken truths hanging between them like a curtain. Jake pushed harder, but something shifted within Tom. He didn't want to be part of this anymore. Then came the day when they found themselves back at that same farm, creeping through the shadows again. But this time it was different. Each step felt heavy, the air thickening around them with a sense of dread. Mikey asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jake insisted, more desperate than resolute. But as they moved toward the barn, memories flooded Mikey's mind, the faces in the photographs, the growl of the dog, the lives intertwined in the fabric of that farm. He shouted, halting in his tracks. Jake paused, looking back at his friend, confusion painting his features. "No," the words poured out like a river breaking free, cleansing the doubts that had built up inside. "We can't keep doing this. This isn't just about money anymore." For a brief moment, silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the distant sound of wind rustling through the fields. Tom stood near Jake, watching his partner's resolve, feeling the shift they had been dancing around for weeks. "Maybe he's right," Tom said slowly, his tone cautious. In that moment, something broke inside Jake. The realization that they were not the invincible criminals he imagined, but rather just scared men in search of validation. "Fine," he spat, frustration spilling over. The words hung in the air like a heavy fog of defeat, but they were accompanied by a wave of newfound clarity. Together, they turned away from the farmhouse, an act of redemption layered in their decision. The drive back felt lighter, the weight of their choices slowly evaporating into the night sky. They exchanged stolen glances, but there was little need for words anymore. They'd chosen to step back, not just from theft, but from the shadow of their naivety. Mikey took a deep breath. "Let's repair what we broke," he said at last. And as they reached town, They knew they were heading toward something more valuable than any heist. They chose friendship over financial gain, conviction over criminality. In the end, the real score wasn't found in empty pockets, but in the strength to walk away from temptation. Each step away from that farmhouse became a testament to their growth, a reminder that sometimes real treasure lies hidden within the lessons we learn along the way. The darkness began to close in, but this time it felt lighter, each moment illuminated by the choice they made to rise above their past. In that simple clarity, they found their true score, the courage to change. On a moonless night, the air was thick with anticipation. A silhouette of an old farmhouse crept into view as a rusty pickup truck eased to a stop on the long gravel road. To most, the place appeared deserted, a remnant of a forgotten time. But for three men nestled inside the truck, it was a treasure trove waiting to be plundered. It was supposed to be the perfect heist. "Look at that place," Jake said, leaning forward, his eyes gleaming with mischief. "No one's around." He had the confidence of a king, believing he was about to seize his throne. Mikey, the smallest of the trio, shifted nervously. "I don't know, man, it feels." He could hardly contain his unease, glancing back at the empty road behind them like a child peering into dark corners. "Stop worrying. We'll be in and out before they even know we were here," Tom said, muscles flexing as he nestled into his seat. He had joined these heists, thinking they'd be quick thrills, not realizing how wrong he could be. Finally, Jake got out and the others reluctantly followed. They moved like shadows, slipping through the cool night air toward the house. The front door, unlatched and swaying in the breeze, beckoned them in. Jake, eager and bold, shoved the door open, the creak echoing ominously in the stillness. Inside was a different world. Dust swirled in their flashlight beams, the air stale and thick, like the house had held its breath for decades. But there were treasures, too old furniture, more than a few relics, and whispers of life long gone. Jake exclaimed, rummaging through some cabinets, tossing aside brittle dishes like yesterday's trash. He found a dusty old toolbox and grinned. This was going to be easier than he had imagined. Meanwhile, Mikey wandered into what appeared to be the living room. Pictures of a family hung crooked on the walls, frozen smiles staring down at him. Something about those eyes struck a chord deep in his heart. "Maybe we shouldn't be here," he murmured, feeling a weight settle on his shoulders. But Jake, relentless and undeterred, found an old leather-bound book on a desk. "Look at this." He flipped through the brittle pages, his excitement palpable. Mikey trembled and Tom eyed the door nervously. He asked tentatively, the thought of facing another person more terrifying than the heist itself. "Who's gonna come back?" Jake laughed, shaking off their concerns. With childish eagerness, he shoved the book into his backpack. A few coins clattered out, falling to the floor like forgotten memories. Suddenly, a sound echoed from the back of the house, a low thud followed by what sounded like growling. The hair on the back of Mikey's neck stood up. He whispered, panic crawling up his spine. Jake's bravado faltered. "Just the wind." But then came another thud, louder this time, followed by the unmistakable sound of nails scratching against wood. The growls were now closer, more threatening. Tom exclaimed, moving closer to Mikey. Before they could process what was happening, an enormous German shepherd burst into view from the shadows, fur bristling and teeth bared. The dog stood like a guardian of the night, muscles tense, ready to pounce. Mikey shouted, taking off toward the front door, adrenaline flooding his veins. They scrambled through the living room, the sound of growling now a terrifying reminder of just how ill-prepared they were for this heist. The dog lunged, barking loudly as they barreled out of the house, hurtling into the night, desperate to escape. Jake was the first to the truck. He yelled, fumbling with the keys, his hands clammy with sweat. The engine sputtered to life, but they needed more time. Tom slammed the door just as the dog reached the pavement, barking ferociously, protecting its territory with courage they hadn't expected. Mikey's heart raced as he gripped the steering wheel, feeling the urgency of their situation sink in. "Go!" Jake shouted, nearly shouting into Mikey's ear. Finally, the engine roared to life and they shot forward, tires screaming against the gravel. They tore down the road, leaving the farmhouse behind, the dog still barking in the distance. Once they reached the streetlights, a wave of relief washed over them, but that relief was soon overshadowed by a suffocating silence. All three men sat in the truck, the adrenaline still coursing through their veins, but the thrill was gone. Mikey gasped, still trying to catch his breath. "It was just a dog," Jake said, trying to sound unbothered. But deep down, he felt the weight of reality pressing down on him. They hadn't planned on this part. They thought they were quick enough, smart enough, but the rawness of the moment shattered their bravado. "Next time, let's not go into someone's home uninvited," Tom replied, his voice heavy with a mixture of fear and shame. Jake had no response. The quiet rejection of their intentions hung in the air thick like smoke. They had all made choices that night, and none of them felt good. They ended up back at the bar, a familiar haunt. It had been their battleground for laughter and bravado, but that night it rang hollow. Sullen faces sat around the counter, whispering tales of their failed heist, each story slipping through the air like poison-tipped darts. A local laughed from the corner chair. Mikey felt his cheeks flame with humiliation. He tried to crack a smile, but inside, that dog's growl echoed in his mind, a reminder of how poorly they had underestimated the situation. Weeks passed and the jokes continued, growing more ridiculous as they spread. The dog became a folk hero, a guardian for the farm, and the three men turned into cautionary tales, their identities reduced to laughs shared over beers. One night, after yet another retelling of their misadventure, Mikey finally couldn't take it anymore. "I don't want to be on the punchline of every joke in this town," he said, voice shaking with frustration. Jake's face contorted with disbelief. "Make what right? We didn't take anything. We invaded someone's home," Mikey insisted, fire now igniting within him. "No way," Tom said, shaking his head. But Mikey stood firm. "Maybe we can at least apologize," Jake said, a mixture of frustration and fear coloring his words. Despite the pushback, Mikey's determination hardened. Weeks later, without telling Jake, Mikey gathered up the courage to return to that farmhouse under the guise of early morning. The dew on the grass sparkled as the sun began to peek over the horizon, painting the sky a brilliant hue of orange and yellow. When he arrived, the farmhouse stood in stark contrast against the morning light. The once ominous presence transformed into something beautiful and serene, a life untouched by time. He walked up to the door, heart pounding in his chest, and knocked. The echo resonated in the stillness, a reminder of the silence that had hung over him since their failed heist. Moments later, the door creaked open. An older man stood there, weathered yet kind, with a curious gaze. The man asked, eyebrows raising with suspicion. I'm here to apologize," Mikey stumbled over his words, struggling to find courage. "A few weeks back, I broke in with some friends. We didn't mean any harm, I just wanted to." The older man studied him, eyes narrowing as if reading the truth etched on Mikey's soul. "You and your friends," Mikey swallowed hard, nodding. With a deep sigh, the farmer stepped back, motioning for Mikey to enter. Inside, the smell of coffee fused with the scent of warm bread. It felt like home. Mikey hesitated but stepped over the threshold, realizing just how different this place felt in daylight. As they sat down at the table, Mikey felt an odd mixture of regret and relief wash over him. "I'm really sorry for what we did." The farmer sipped his coffee, wiping his hands on his faded apron. "You have no idea how much work goes into keeping this place alive." Mikey felt a fresh wave of shame wash over him, the gravity of his actions settling like a stone in his gut. "I know." The farmer nodded, giving Mikey a chance to process his words. "You young folks sometimes forget that actions carry weight." Mikey agreed, clenching his fists, trying to grasp the lesson unfolding before him. I wish we could help." The farmer leaned back, a smile creeping to his lips, breaking the tension in the air. "How about you come back and lend a hand? This time of year is busy with planting." The offer surprised Mikey. "Sure, but don't think it'll be easy." The farmer's eyes twinkled, eager to teach a lesson that often skipped generations. Mikey felt a lifting in his spirit. And so, for the summer months that followed, Mikey returned, embracing the labor of love on the farm. Side by side with the farmer, he learned the importance of respect and hard work, realizing that each seed planted was a step toward growth, not just of crops but of understanding. Jake and Tom watched from a distance at first, their guilt evident in their eyes. They wanted to believe they could too change, but fear held them back. Eventually, encouragement came from Mikey, and they too joined in. Each laborious day became a lesson. Each shovel of earth turned a reminder of the past. They learned the stories behind the farmhouse, its roots grounded deep into this community. The laughter returned, but this time it was layered with sincerity, enriched by a newfound connection to the land and its protectors. Days turned into weeks, and the three men felt that lost piece of themselves slowly coming back, no longer crooks looking for easy scores, but rather young men striving to do something meaningful. The legendary dog, once a threat, became a protector in their hearts, a symbol of loyalty and commitment to what truly mattered. They no longer feared its growls. Instead, they welcomed it as a friend. By the end of the summer, the farmer looked at them with genuine pride. "You have all turned into the kind of men who contribute to their community," he said, his voice laced with warmth. Mikey grinned, meeting Jake's gaze, understanding that it was not about what they once wanted, but who they had become, a lesson in humility and growth, wrapped in the soil of the farm they had once tried to exploit. In the end, they found more than they could have ever stolen. It was redemption, shaped by the hands of hard work and the heart of a community that welcomed them back. Crooks turned friends. And beneath that expansive sky, they learned the true value of life wasn't found in money or possessions, but in the rich connections woven into the earth they had learned to cherish. The stillness of the night seemed to wrap around the farmhouse like a thick blanket, muffling all sound. In the dark, a rusty pickup truck pulled up to the gravel driveway. Inside the truck, three men huddled, their breaths heavy with anticipation. They exchanged glances, their hearts racing with both excitement and dread. This was it, the big score they'd been dreaming about. Jake said, his voice a mix of eagerness and confidence. "It's just a rundown farm, how hard can it be?" His confidence was infectious, drawing in the others like moths to a flame. Mikey, the smallest member of the group, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "I don't know, man, something feels off." "Relax," Tom chimed in, the muscle of the group, cracking his knuckles defiantly. "It's a farm." He chuckled, but the sound had an edge, and even he was unsure. They climbed out of the truck, the cool air brushing against their faces, each of them cloaked in shadows. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, creating a sort of darkness that felt alive, teeming with possibilities and threats. They walked toward the back door, their footsteps crunching over small stones, each sound amplified in the heavy silence. Jake pulled at the old door handle. It creaked loudly as it swung open, echoing through the stillness. Inside, the air was stagnant, thick with dust and the scent of mildew. Dust motes floated lazily in the beam of their flashlights, swirling around them like ghosts of the past. Old furniture, covered in dusty sheets, stood sentinel in the dim light. Jake shouted as he dashed into the living room, ignoring Mikey's nervous glances. Rifled through drawers, tossing aside mundane items as if they didn't deserve his time. Mikey wandered into a small kitchen, the feeling of unease wrapping tighter around him. Old photographs hung on the wall, smiling faces frozen in time. He felt like an intruder stepping into a place where he didn't belong. He mumbled, half hoping someone would agree with him. "Stop being a wuss," Jake shot back, focused on his search for anything of value. He knocked a pot over, sending a loud clatter through the air. Suddenly, a loud noise reverberated from the back of the house, a heavy thud followed by a low growl that rumbled through the silence like thunder. Mikey's stomach dropped. Jake's bravado faltered for a moment. He forced a laugh, but its echo felt weak. Tom, sensing the tension, moved toward the back of the house. "Let's check it out," he said, his curiosity piqued. He wasn't afraid, he was eager. They crept toward the back door, their movements cautious, straining to hear the sounds of whatever lurked in the shadows. Jake opened the door just a crack, peering into the darkness beyond. The growling intensified, and a pair of glowing eyes emerged from the depths, a massive German shepherd, its powerful frame poised to protect what was its own. Jake shouted, slamming the door shut. At that moment, the creature lunged, its growls turning into a fierce bark that shook them to the core. Mikey cried, a rush of adrenaline forcing him into action. He bolted back through the living room, the sound of paws pounding behind him like a countdown clock. Tom yelled, barreling through the door they had just entered, heart racing as the reality of their situation sank in. They all dashed to the front of the house, the threat of the dog hot on their heels. Jake stumbled into the front yard, glancing back at the barking beast lunging toward them. He shouted, adrenaline pumping through him like a fire. Once outside, he fumbled for the keys, pulse raging in his ears. His hands were shaking uncontrollably. He pleaded, heart in his throat. Mikey slammed into the passenger seat, eyes wide with fear. His voice came out in a breathless gasp. Tom crashed into the backseat, slamming the door behind him just as the dog reached the truck, barking furiously, yet standing its ground, its loyalty unwavering. The engine sputtered to life, but in that moment everything felt surreal. Finally, Jake revved the engine, tires squealing as they tore down the dirt road, the dog's fierce barks receding into the distance. The three men sat in silence, the adrenaline beginning to fade, leaving them with a sense of dread that wrapped around them like fog. Mikey murmured, still wide-eyed, "We're thieves, not heroes." Jake barked, tension twisting his features. Their laughter had faded into simple disbelief, leaving an awkward silence where camaraderie once thrived. They had thought this would be an easy score, yet here they were, heartbroken not just by the run-in with the dog but also by the weight of their own choices. As they reached the city limits, Mikey broke the silence, voice trembling. "We seriously need to rethink this. What if we'd gotten hurt?" Tom sighed, his face a mask of regret. "We should have just walked away, man." But Jake, ever the leader, shook his head, unwilling to concede defeat. "No, we just need to plan better next time. It's just a farm." The bitterness in his tone stung like salt in a wound. In the following weeks, their adventure turned into a joke among locals, whispered in hushed tones and chuckled over beers. The legend of the brave dog guarding the farmhouse grew, embellishing their already embarrassing situation. Mikey sat in a bar one night, the laughter echoing off the walls as stories about their misadventure tore through the crowd. Someone laughed. Each laugh pierced Mikey's heart, and he could feel the shame rise up, hot and acute. "Maybe we should just leave this place, man," Tom sighed, running a hand over his face. But Jake was restless. "No way, this isn't over. We'll get it right next time. Just need to wait for the perfect moment," he insisted, his bravado growing with each stirring of resentment. But weeks turned into months, and every time Mikey stepped into the bar, he could feel the stares, the disbelief lingering in the air like smoke. "I'm done with this," he finally blurted one night. Jake shot back, leaning forward. Mikey replied, anger rising in his chest. "Remember how we felt just running away? Let's go back and apologize or something." Tom looked hesitant but leaned in. "It might be a good idea." Seeing the hesitation in Tom's eyes sparked something in Jake, and he finally relented, albeit unwillingly. "Fine, let's go back and get it over with." He trailed off, leaving the threat suspended in the air. Days later, they gathered again under a canvas of stars, returning to that same farmhouse that had turned from a target to a source of dread. The night felt still, unusually calm, as if the world was holding its breath. The three of them approached the house, hearts thumping in unison. "Okay, let's just knock and get this over with," Jake muttered, but there was a slight quiver in his voice. Mikey took a deep breath and stepped forward, trying to steady his nerves. They had come to face the consequences of their actions, but that didn't make it any easier. He rapped on the door, the sound echoing into the night. Moments passed. A dog barked from the shadows, closer this time. Jake's eyes widened, but Mikey held firm, standing tall. Finally, the door creaked open, revealing a grizzled farmer, his eyes narrowing as he took in the sight before him. He asked, voice gruff but curious. Sir," Mikey stammered, taking a half step forward. "We came to apologize. A while back we tried to." The farmer studied them, assessing. "We didn't mean any harm," Mikey continued, courage pushing him to speak. "We were stupid, we were young." The farmer paused, eyeing them with an intensity that felt relentless. Behind him, the German shepherd stood, a powerful presence, ready to defend its territory. It glanced back at the farmer, a silent guardian awaiting his command. The farmer finally spoke, each word measured and heavy. "It's not just land and crops." Mikey's heart sank. "I understand," he replied, feeling the weight of shame settle on his shoulders. "We thought we could get something for nothing, but it was a mistake," Mikey said, voice firm now. The farmer's expression softened, his eyes searching their faces. "Making it right isn't easy work, it takes commitment." Jake asked, shifting nervously. Actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences require more than an apology. Mikey shared a glance with Tom and Jake, seeing the determination reflected in his friend's eyes. He asked finally, voice steady. The farmer's lips curled into a slight smile. Well, it's planting season. The three men hesitated, feeling the enormity of the offer sink in. Tom asked, eyebrows raised. Absolutely. You can repay your debt with some honest work, the farmer replied, nodding. But it won't be easy. Mikey felt a sense of relief washing over him, mixed with excitement. And so they began, their days transforming from aimless hustling into the labor of love. They learned how to plant seeds, the care it took to nurture them, the reward of watching life spring forth from the soil. Each long day under the sun built not just crops but also character. They learned about respect for the land and for the lives intertwined with it. The farmer regaled them with stories of his family, sharing laughter and lessons that had been passed down through generations. The farmer and the dog became symbols of loyalty and pride, opening their hearts, particularly to Mikey, who had sought redemption. Mikey found joy in labor he never expected, taking pride in each seed planted and caring for the soil that fed them. What once seemed like a heist became labor, woven with purpose, each sweat-soaked shirt a chapter in their evolving story. As summer turned into fall, they had earned not just the farmer's respect but also their own. They had grown in ways they never could have anticipated. The dog, once a fierce guardian, became a loyal companion, running alongside them as they worked the fields. Jake, Tom, and Mikey shared jokes and camaraderie once more, yet something felt fundamentally different. This was not the thrill of the chase. This was fulfillment, a bond growing deeper with each task completed, each lesson learned, each laugh shared. One evening, as they prepared for the harvest, they sat together beneath the stars, laughter filling the air. Tom mused. From crooks to farmers, Jake added, shaking his head in disbelief. Mikey smiled, looking out over the fields they had tended with care. It's weird. I thought I wanted something easy, but this feels right. The farmer stood nearby, watching the three men with a proud smile. You always reap what you sow, boys. They nodded, feeling the weight of his words settle within them. The harvest brought a celebration, the culmination of their hard work, a testament to their journey from seekers of easy gains to caretakers of a community. They celebrated not just the crops but the friendships forged in the soil, the roots they had planted deeper than they had imagined. In the end, they discovered that life isn't about shortcuts or easy scores. It's about healing, hard work, and the connections we make along the way. And when they looked back at the farmhouse, they saw not just their past but the promise of a future that was richer than money could ever buy, woven from the lessons learned, the friendships formed, and the courage to change. Their days of petty crime faded into the past, replaced by laughter, respect, and the joys of a life cultivated from the earth. And as they planned for the next season, they smiled, knowing they were ready to face whatever came their way together. The night was draped in darkness, not a star in sight. It was a winding country road, flanked on either side by thick brush and overgrown grass, leading to a solitary farmhouse that had seen better days. The truck rolled to a halt 100 yards away, its engine whispering in the stillness. Inside, three men sat, hearts pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. Jake, the self-proclaimed mastermind of the group, leaned forward, his eyes glittering with ambition. Look at that place. It's virtually abandoned. Mikey, the most timid of the trio, shifted nervously. I don't know, man, it feels creepy. Don't be a coward, Tom, the muscle of the group, scoffed. It's just a rundown farm. What's the worst that could happen? He cracked his knuckles, his bravado buoying the others, but inside a flicker of doubt ignited. Jake saw their hesitance but waved it off. We're in and out. With a renewed sense of purpose, he opened the truck door, the cool night air rushing in, filled with the quiet whispers of anticipation. They trudged across the gravel, each crunch beneath their boots echoing louder than the last. Approaching the farmhouse, the window frames sagged like old men weary from time. A darkened door swung slightly in the wind, inviting yet foreboding. Here goes nothing, Jake murmured, pushing the door with a creak that shattered the stillness. Inside, dust danced in the beams of moonlight slicing through the gaps, enveloping old furniture draped in white sheets. The air smelled of damp wood and neglect. Jake wasted no time. He made a beeline for a cluttered table, rummaging through the drawers. "Come on, there's got to be something useful here," he muttered. Mikey hung back, heart racing as he looked around. Memories of family photos on the walls, laughter frozen in time, felt too intrusive. He felt like a ghost haunting a long-abandoned home. "Maybe we should just leave," he said quietly. "Shut up, Mikey. You're ruining the moment," Tom barked, his confidence pushing them forward despite the heavy atmosphere. The minutes ticked away, time slipping through their fingers like the dust swirling around them, but all they found were remnants of a forgotten life. A broken chair, some rusty tools, nothing of real value. Jake's frustration mounted. "Where's the money?" He almost shouted it, the desperation creeping into his tone. Just then, a loud thud echoed from the back of the house, making the three men freeze in place. A low growl followed, rumbling from the shadows. The sound cut through the air like a cold knife. Mikey's voice quaked, a mixture of fear and disbelief. "Probably just old pipes," Jake brushed off quickly, but they could all feel the tension thickening. Tom exchanged a worried glance with Mikey, his bravado starting to falter. "Let's check it out," he said finally, edging toward the back door against Jake's protests. "Are you guys stupid?" Jake called after them, annoyance lacing his voice. The two made their way toward the back entrance, the door hanging on rusted hinges. When they pushed it open, the air that wafted out was damp and heavy, laden with secrets. As they peered into the darkness, a massive German shepherd appeared, its muscles taut, a sentinel poised to protect. Its eyes glowed in the dim light, fierce and unyielding. In a blink, the dog lunged forward, barking like thunder, echoing through the quiet night and sending the trio tumbling back in shock. Mikey screamed, driven by instinct. They bolted for the front door, heartbeats thundering in their ears, fear clawing at their insides. The growls followed them, a terrifying reminder of their intrusion. Jake rushed through the living room, nearly tripping over a table as he scrambled outside, adrenaline fueling his every move. He yelled when they finally reached the vehicle, fumbling with the keys, praying his panic wouldn't betray him. Mikey dove into the driver's seat, hands shaking as he turned the key, flames sparking to life in the engine. But the panic set in. He pleaded, each second stretching into eternity. Tom slammed the door just as the dog reached the pavement, its bark a siren piercing through the air. The truck roared to life. They tore down the dirt road, gravel spraying behind them like angry memories trying to catch up. As they sped away, the weight of the night pressed down upon them, a heavy silence settling in the cab. Mikey gasped, breath coming in quick bursts. Jake slumped back in his seat, the bravado now stripped away, leaving only fear. "I thought farms were supposed to be easy targets." Tom sighed, the thrill evaporating. A thick silence filled the truck as they drove deeper into the night, weaving through familiar streets but feeling utterly lost. Days turned into weeks, but the memory of that night stuck like gum to the soles of their shoes. They were now the punchline of every joke in town. People would laugh at the bar, pouring into their ears like acid. The laughter stung. Mikey felt the weight of humiliation pressing down, his face reddening whenever the stories circulated. "We can't keep doing this," he finally said one evening as they huddled in the bar, the faint hum of laughter around them. Jake, sitting with steely resolve, shrugged. "We'll get another chance." But even Tom's bravado was beginning to wane. "I don't know, man." As apprehension thickened the air, Jake's frustration seeped through. "What are you saying, that we should quit?" Mikey frowned, glancing at Tom, who now shared his silent concern. "Maybe it's time to face what we did." Jake snapped. "We got chased by a dog." Mikey felt a knot of determination tighten in his chest. "Yeah, I do. We need to face it." Weeks of shame had turned into a resolve to confront not just the dog, but the mistakes they'd made. Finally, after days of restless thought, Mikey pushed his way through the muted streets until he found himself standing outside the same familiar farmhouse under a starlit sky that wasn't as forgiving as he hoped. With each step toward the flickering porch light, emotions boiled within him: fear, guilt, and a flicker of hope. He raised a trembling hand and knocked. Moments later, he heard the creaking of the door as it swung open. The farmer stood there, a weathered figure with piercing blue eyes, studying him with a look that suggested years of hard work and the weight of stories untold. Sir," Mikey stuttered, gulping down his anxiety. The farmer raised an eyebrow, skepticism evident. "Apologize." "About a month ago, we tried to break in," Mikey admitted, shame flooding his voice, each word heavy with regret. "We didn't mean any harm." The farmer's expression shifted, arms crossed. "No, it doesn't," Mikey mumbled, cheeks heating. "I get that now. I wanted to." In the back, the German shepherd's low growl resonated softly, standing firm beside its owner. It seemed like more than a pet. It was a sentinel, eager to protect. The farmer challenged, voice firm yet curious. Mikey took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair. "I understand now what a home really means." The farmer studied him closely, his gaze piercing through the darkness to the heart of the matter. "Words are easy, but actions carry weight." Mikey asked, confusion knitting his brow. "Making things right requires effort. If you really want to change, you'll have to prove it." Mikey exchanged glances with the truck still parked nearby. His friends had come along, standing in the shadows, feeling the weight of the situation as well. "Yes," he said, his voice growing stronger. "Then welcome to the farm. You can start planting next week." The warmth in the farmer's voice surprised Mikey, sparking a flicker of hope. And so began their journey, a new days filled with labor and learning, their previous lives as crooks now a lesson etched in their minds. They tilled the soil, planted seeds, and watched life spring forth. Each drop of sweat became a testament to their change, a redeeming journey forged through hard work. The laughter that had once echoed with resentment now transformed into something profound, woven with determination and growth. They formed a bond, not just with the farmer but with his loyal dog, a guardian that seemed to understand their transformation. Over the long days, they learned about loyalty, commitment, and the inherent value in caring for something beyond themselves. Each sunset marked not just the end of a day's labor but the beginning of a new dawn for who they'd become. As winter approached, they found a newfound respect for the land and the friendships forged through toil. The dog, a fierce protector, became a playful spirit, running alongside them during breaks, no longer a threat but a friend. One evening, gathered on the porch after a long day's work, they relished the warmth of camaraderie. Tom mused, glancing over at Jake and Mikey, the warmth of their pasts challenged by the freshness of their present. "From thieves to farmers," Jake replied, disbelief coloring his tone. Mikey smiled, looking out over the fields that he had once thoughtlessly invaded. "This really feels right, doesn't it?" The farmer stood watching them, pride shining in his eyes. Life is about growing, both in crops and in character. Their journey had transformed them, no longer just searching for an easy score but discovering something far more valuable. They had unearthed the richness of connections fostered through labor, understanding hardships, and appreciating the beauty in hard-earned successes. In the end, they had truly become family, not just to the farmer and his dog, but to the land they once sought to exploit. And as the sun set behind the hills, they smiled, knowing they had finally found their place in the world. Each moment, each lesson was a seed planted for a bright future, rooted in resilience and ultimately in redemption. The night was still, as if the world itself were holding its breath, casting an unsettling quiet over the countryside. An old farmhouse loomed like a ghost in the moonlight, its windows dark and hollow. Just off a narrow, gravel road, a rusty pickup truck rolled to a stop. Inside the truck, 3 men huddled together, hearts pounding with anticipation. Jake, the self-proclaimed leader of the group, leaned forward, his excitement barely contained. "Look at that place," he said, eyes gleaming. "It's just a rundown farm." Mikey, the most anxious of the bunch, stared at the farmhouse, feeling an instinctive churn in his stomach. "I don't know, man. What if someone's home?" Tom, the muscle of the operation, scoffed at Mikey's concerns. "What Ray you worried about? It's not like they're guarding a vault or something." Jake climbed out of the truck, confidence radiating from him. The air hung thick with tension and unspoken fears, but they pushed those thoughts to the back of their minds. They crept up the gravel drive, the crunch beneath their feet sending whispers of doubt into the night. A door hung ajar, creaking lightly in the breeze. Jake paused for a moment, glancing back at Mikey. "Let's just get it over with," Mikey replied, trying to sound braver than he felt. Inside, the farmhouse was cloaked in shadows, dust swirling in the air as they moved deeper. Old furniture lay draped in white sheets, memories frozen beneath layers of neglect. The scent of mildew clung to the walls like a sorrowful ghost. Jake exclaimed as he rummaged through a drawer, tossing aside outdated utensils and dusty trinkets in search of riches. Mikey wandered into a dimly lit kitchen, his pulse quickening as he examined family photographs on the wall, smiling faces trapped in time. Each photo felt like an intrusion into lives they had no right to disturb. "Jake, I really think we should leave," he said softly, turning back toward the others. "Stop being such a baby," Tom shot back, rifling through cabinets filled with chipped plates and dusty bits of glassware. "We didn't come all this way to leave empty-handed." A creaking sound echoed through the halls, but this time it was not an old house settling. It was something much more sinister. From the back of the house came a thud, followed by a low, guttural growl that chilled their blood. Mikey said, his voice trembling. Jake froze in place, fear flickering across his face. But doubt clawed at his resolve. The three exchanged nervous glances. Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown. Tom, fueled by adrenaline and bravado, took a step toward the back of the house. "Let's check it out," he insisted, pulling the door open just a crack. "Are you crazy?" Jake spat, but Tom wasn't backing down. Pushing the door wider, they peered into the darkness beyond. Suddenly, the growls escalated into a ferocious bark, and out of the shadows lunged a massive German shepherd, its muscles taut and ready to defend its territory. Mikey shouted, fear propelling him forward as they charged back through the living room, panic igniting their flight response. Adrenaline surged through their veins as they barreled toward the front door. Jake bolted through the door, practically tripping over his own feet. He yelled, the urgency barely masking his growing dread. Tom, just behind him, lunged to keep up, while Mikey's heart raced as he dove into the driver's seat, hands shaking madly as he struggled to find the keys. He begged. The growling dog followed closely behind, the sound of its paws pounding against the wooden floor reverberating through the night. Just as the engine finally roared to life, Tom slammed the door shut, barely evading the jaws of the dog that now stood at the edge of the porch, barking like a siren. Mikey slammed the gas pedal to the floor, spinning the tires on the gravel and sending dust flying as they tore down the road, fearing for their lives. Once they were safely away, heartbeats still pounding against their ribs, a silence filled the truck, suffocating and heavy. Mikey gasped, still trying to process the chaos they had just escaped. "We underestimated that dog," Jake muttered, his bravado now deflated. Tom, who had been silent, finally broke the tension. "What were we thinking? This isn't just some abandoned house. We thought we could get away with it, just like that," Jake said, rubbing his temples in frustration. "But we didn't. We got chased off by a dog." The laughter at the bar had been like a dagger for Mikey. Stories of their attempt circulated like wildfire, morphing them into a fabled joke. "Did you hear about the idiots who tried to rob a farm?" Those jeers haunted him, pulling tighter around his throat with each laugh that echoed in his mind. They had become local legends for all the wrong reasons. "We can't keep pretending this never happened," he finally said one night, the bar buzzing with laughter around them. Jake asked, leaning back with a smirk, "Just give it time." "No, they don't," Mikey shot back. "This was wrong. I want to make it right." Jake's eyes narrowed. "You want to head back to the farm after everything?" But the fire behind Mikey's words surged. "We need to apologize. What we did wasn't just stupid, it was disrespectful. We invaded someone's home." Tom, who had been twirling his beer bottle, looked up slowly, weighing the thought. Maybe he's right. Jake shook his head. "You guys can't be serious." Mikey was firm. "But we can't keep running, we need to face it." Weeks of shame turned smoothly into a determination that pushed them towards confrontation. They knew they had to return. Mikey felt the weight of the unresolved burden on his shoulders as he stood outside the farmhouse once more, the moon illuminating the path ahead. The house felt different under the night sky, less like a looming threat and more like a wall adorned with memories. He took a breath, heart racing. But he marched to the door, fists clenched and resolve ironclad. He knocked, the sound echoing through the air. Moments passed. The heart of the house seemed to beat back at him, waiting. Finally, the door opened. The farmer stood there, his face hard and weathered, eyes narrowed against the dark. He asked, voice gruff, Mikey could feel his heart pounding, each beat echoing like thunder. "We came to apologize," he stammered. "A while back we tried to break in. It was wrong of us." The farmer stood silently, weighing the sincerity of the youth before him. Behind him, the German shepherd growled lowly, muscles taut, ready to defend. The farmer finally asked, his tone cautious. "We realized we were wrong," Mikey replied, forcing the words out. "We want to make amends." The farmer's gaze narrowed, and Mikey could feel the weight of judgment settling heavy in the quiet air. "Yes," Mikey implored, glancing quickly at Tom and Jake, who stood awkwardly behind him, an air of uncertainty weaving around them. "We want to learn." There was a long pause as the farmer looked from Mikey to the dog, who shifted slightly but maintained its watchful stance. "All right," he finally said, voice steady. "But those are big words. You'll find out what it means to work hard." "We're ready," Mikey breathed, relief flooding over him. Before they could celebrate, a noise interrupted. A sudden rustle from the back of the house caught their attention. The dog snapped to attention, low growls emanating from deep within its throat. The farmer frowned, tension tightening around the group. Tom asked, scanning the dark landscape behind them. "Stay here," the farmer ordered, turning to his dog. With that, the dog and farmer disappeared through the back door, leaving Mikey, Jake, and Tom standing frozen on the front porch, hearts racing. Mikey whispered, anxiety coiling in his stomach. "Probably just a raccoon or something," Jake said, though his voice lacked conviction. But moments later, a shrill scream erupted from the darkness behind the house, piercing the night. The farmer's voice rang out, panic lacing his tone. "Get back!" Mikey's blood ran cold as the dog barked sharply, a cacophony of chaos erupting. Adrenaline surged through him, body tightening as he moved forward instinctively. "What's happening?" Jake hissed, but Mikey was already sprinting toward the noise, his heart pounding louder than his footsteps. Tom hesitated, but something in Mikey's eyes urged him to follow. The two raced around the side of the house, dread pooling in their stomachs. As they approached the rear, the scene unfolded like a nightmare. The farmer was struggling against a figure in dark clothing, grappling on the ground as the dog lunged forward, teeth bared. The farmer shouted. Mikey didn't think. He dashed forward, adrenaline fueling his movements, but as he reached the scuffle, his foot slipped on gravel, sending him sprawling into the dirt. The figure caught sight of him, eyes wide with surprise. In that moment of clarity, Mikey realized that this was no mere robbery, it was an invasion, a true threat. The farm had once represented their aimless greed, and now it was a battleground. Tom joined Mikey, attempting to pull him up. With renewed strength, they surged forward, adrenaline coursing through them, ready to fight for something far greater than they had ever imagined. But then the man turned, and the sight of his face sent a wave of dread over them. This was not just a random thief. It was someone they recognized. Someone from their past, someone they thought they'd left behind. Jake, trailing behind, stumbled as the figure pulled away from the farmer, eyes glancing toward the trio, a menacing smile spreading across his face. "Look who it is," the intruder sneered, tension hanging heavily in the air. In that moment, fear and recognition surged through them, morphing the night from a simple redemption into a fight for survival. What had started as an easy score spiraled into chaos, deeper than they could have ever imagined. Mikey felt a rush of adrenaline surge through him. They weren't just defending a farm anymore. They were defending their very lives against someone who knew them too well, someone who would stop at nothing. The dog lunged, and the confrontation erupted in a whirlwind of chaos. Fear and courage intertwined as the farmer called for reinforcements. The fight for something real ignited under the vast, unyielding sky. And as the struggle unfolded beneath the stars, the stakes transformed from a simple score to a fight for everything they had now learned to value, leaving them to confront not just their past, but the fight of their lives in that very moment.